Hello. Today we'll discuss demand pull inflation. First, we will try to understand the meaning of demand pull inflation, and then we will go to the explanations given by two theories. One is the inflationary gap analysis, and the second one is the monetarist theory of inflation. So let us try to understand the meaning of demand pull inflation. The demand pull inflation is also called excess demand inflation. Excess demand means aggregate demand in excess of maximum feasible output. And according to the theory of demand pull inflation, inflation occurs because the excess demand for output pulls the prices up as the supply cannot be increased beyond the potential output. For every economy, there is a potential output, that's a maximum feasible output. And if the aggregated demand in the economy is greater than the potential output, that's a maximum feasible output, the excess demand for output pulls the prices up as the supply cannot be increased beyond the potential output. So according to the theory of demand pull inflation, inflation occurs because the excess demand for output pulls the prices up as the supply cannot be increased beyond the potential output. And to explain this demand pull inflation, we have two theories. One is the Keynesian Inflationary Gap analysis, and the second one is the Monetarist Theory of inflation. First, we will discuss the Keynesian Inflationary Gap analysis. Keynes presented the theory of inflationary gap in his little book, How to Pay for the War. And this little book was published in the year 1940. Until the inflationary gap refers to the excess of expected expenditure over the available supply of output. The inflationary gap refers to the excess of expected expenditure over the available supply of output. And this analysis was presented in the little book How to Pay for the War, published in 1940. Now, let us try to understand this argument with the help of the famous Keynesian cross diagram. And here you have the Keynes cross diagram. On the vertical axis, expenditure is measured, E is measured, that's aggregate demand. And on the horizontal axis, Y, the total output in the economy, the income in the economy is measured. And this blue line, this function is the aggregate demand function or aggregate expenditure function. And as you know, aggregate expenditure in a closed economy consists of consumption, investment, and government expenditure. So this function is called E. E is equal to C plus I plus G. And now you know, vertical axis measures expenditure, horizontal axis measures income. A line drawn exactly at the middle of the two axes, that will be a 45-degree line. That will be, this line will be a line that shows equality between the variables measured on either axis. E is equal to Y. This is a 45-degree line. All the points along the line will give you equality between the two variables measured on either axis. That is, E is equal to Y. Now, above and below this 45-degree line, the two variables are not equal. Now think about this economy where the potential output or the maximum feasible output, the full employment output is given. See that green spot on the horizontal axis, we call it the full employment output, YF. And if the full employment output is YF, you draw a line up, it indicates, this line indicates there is a gap between the aggregate demand function, the 45-degree line. So this is the inflationary gap. This gap is given by points A and B, and this is the inflationary gap, excess aggregate demand. And according to Keynes, this excess of aggregate expenditure pulls the prices up, and there will naturally be inflationary pressures in the economy because the economy will not be able to produce beyond the full employment output. Full employment means the economy is making use of all available resources in an optimal manner. So no economy can go beyond the full employment output. If the aggregate demand exceeds the aggregate supply, the full employment output, there will be inflation because there is an inflationary gap that will pull the prices up. And according to Keynes, if you want to reduce this price level or bring the economy back to stability, because there is a instability in the economy caused by inflationary pressures. If you want to bring the economy back to stability, the only way this economy can do is to reduce the expenditure. E should be brought down. E function, that's the aggregated demand function, should be brought down through an appropriate fiscal policy, in this case a contractionary fiscal policy that will result in reduction in the aggregate expenditure. If that happens, let us see what is happening if the demand function moves down because of the reduction in the expenditure. Now, there is an equality at point A where there is no gap, so there is perfect equality with the stability. Inflation is wiped off. So this is the explanation given by Keynesian inflationary gap analysis. Now let us move over to another explanation of the demand pull inflation, namely the monetarist theory of inflation. The monetarist theory of inflation is an extension of the quantity theory of money. And you know the famous quantity theory of money. According to the quantity theory of money, excess increase in the quantity of money, that is M, is responsible for increase in prices. If you increase the money supply by 10%, the price level in the economy will be increased by 10%. So according to the quantity theory of money, excess increase in the quantity of money is responsible for the increase in prices. And in a static economy means an economy which is not growing, P increases in the same proportion as M is increased, so that we have this equation P dot is equal to M dot. The price level, the growth rate of the prices, the rate of change in the price level will be equal to the rate of growth of money supply. So any increase in the money supply, if the money supply is increased by 12% in a static economy, the price level in this economy, meaning inflation in this economy, will be increased by 12%. So exactly in proportion to the change in the money supply. That's a case in a static economy. But in a real world, economy is not a static economy. Economy is a growing economy. And what is happening to a growing economy? In a growing economy, the real demand for money will be growing over time. Because in a growing economy, there is additional physical volume of goods and services to be transacted. So in order to meet the demand for the newly produced goods and services in a growing economy, there must be demand for money. So money supply in excess of the growth rate and output lead to inflationary pressures in such an economy. So only excess increase in the stock of money will lead to price rise in a growing economy. So the rate of inflation in a growing economy is given by P dot is equal to M dot minus Y dot. That is, P dot, you know, it's inflation or the price level, and M dot is the growth rate of money, quantity of money increase, and Y dot is the growth rate of output. Any increase in the money supply in excess of output, if M dot is greater than Y dot, meaning if the money supply increase in the economy is greater than the increase in the output in the economy, that would definitely reflected in the price level. There will be an inflationary pressure in the economy. So this is the explanation given by the monetarist as a counter explanation to the Keynesian inflationary gap analysis. So we have in this session discussed the demand pull inflation. We know aggregate demand is greater than aggregate supply, so it is an excess demand inflation. Now the explanations given by the two schools, the Keynesian inflationary gap emphasizes the change in the aggregate expenditure, aggregate demand in the economy, and the monetarist considered inflation as a monetary phenomenon. So I think it's a very fruitful session we had today. All of you enjoyed this session. So with this, we conclude that according to the demand pull inflation, if the aggregated demand in the economy through whatever means, through change in expenditure or increase in the money supply, that will lead to inflationary pressures in the economy, and appropriate policy will have to be adopted and implemented to address the issue of inflation. And according to the Keynesian school, it is a government fiscal policy that matters, whereas the monetarist argue that it's the central bank or the monetary authority responsible for bringing about stability in an economy. So the monetarists consider inflation as a monetary phenomenon. Therefore, it is the role of the monetary authority to control inflationary pressures in the economy and bring the economy back to a state of stability. I hope all of you have enjoyed the session. So thank you.